So let's talk about median and mode. So we've talked about mean already, but just like mean, median and mode are measures of central tendency. Okay, so what that means is it helps us to observe a data set and try to find where is the center of that data set. Okay, but median and mode help us a little bit because mean has some flaws that make it not so great for examining every data set that exists out there. None of them are perfect, but all three together give us a better picture. So let's talk about what these actually are. We'll start with just median. Okay, so median is just the middle value. Okay, so that is exactly what it sounds like. So if I were to give you a data set that was like this one, say it was 5, 7, 9, 13, 24. The middle value is simply the value that is in the middle once it's sorted. Now that's the important part here, that it must be sorted. Right? We'll talk about that a little bit more in a bit, but it has to go from the smallest to the largest, left to right. If it's not in that order, you just have to sort the set. We'll do that a little bit later. But first I'm going to tell you also about mode. So mode is just the most common value. Okay. Now the most common value is just the value that shows up the most. So it could be, say in this data set, 6, 7, 7, 9, 10, 11. The mode, the most common value, would be these 7 since they show up twice. Okay. Now some exceptions for these two rules here. With the median, I'm just going to give it a little bit more room here. Since we've kind of gone over the basic definition of these, now we're going to go over the exceptions. Just real quick here. With the median, it's really easy if we have an even, or rather an odd number of data points. But what if we have an even number? So let's say we instead had this set here. Let's say it was 1, 2, 3, 4. Just 4 values there. The middle number should be right about there, but of course there's no middle number here, there's 2 middle numbers. So when that happens, we just find the average of those 2 middle numbers, the mean of those 2 middle numbers, which if you remember, just means we take those 2 numbers, 2 and 3, and we add them up, and we divide by the number of numbers. In this case it's 2, because there are 2 numbers. 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 divided by 2 is 2.5, which would become our median. For mode, you can have a situation in which you have no modes, one mode, or multiple modes. So for example, if we had a data set like this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this set, there are no modes, since all values are equally common. Okay? Now, it doesn't have to be all once that they show up. You could have 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. They just all have to show up the exact same amount of times. Usually doesn't happen. Sometimes it does. So it's good to know. The other thing that can happen with mode is multiple modes. So let's say instead we had this data set. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. They don't all show up the same amount, but the 2s and the 4s both show up twice. So that's the important part, is that they both show up more than the other values, but they show up an equal number of times to each other. Okay, so in this case, your modes, plural, are 2 and 4. Okay, so those are kind of what median and mode are, and some of their exceptions. So let's look at an example to help us kind of solidify our understanding here. So looking just at median and mode. Let's say we're given a data set that looks a little bit like, let's go fairly large here. We're going to say we have 11, 3, 16, I'm just picking numbers here, 29, 31, 65, 79, 51. Now I'm not giving any context to these numbers because to work with them statistically, we don't really need the context. It just helps us to think about it sometimes, but sometimes we can get lost in that context and start thinking too much about the context. So if you need to, just pull out the numbers and just think about the numbers, because the numbers are always the same, despite the context. So first thing we notice when we're asking about median and mode, this is not in the right order. Right? We have 11, 3, 16, 29. That's not how counting works. So let's put it in the right order. So all we do is we take the smallest value first, right? So that's going to be 3, and then we continue up to the next smallest value, 11, and so on and so forth until we have an ordered list here. Now it might take you a minute to do this. I just have this done quickly because I have it written down beside me because I came prepared. But it might take you a minute, and that's okay, especially for longer sets that can get a little bit confusing. So don't worry if that takes you a couple minutes. It's all good. We'll get there. Okay, so let's take a look at the median. Okay, so again, that's the middle value. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 values. So that's an even number of values. So there's no direct middle number. But we do have these two numbers that are kind of in the middle. They're the two in the center. And because this is an even set, we're going to have to take the average. So we add them up, 29 plus 31. Divide by the number of terms, 2. 29 plus 31 is 60. Divided by 2 is 30. So that's our median, our middle number. Now our mode. So for our mode, we need to find what occurs the most. Okay, so you've got 103, 111, 116, 129, 131, 151, 165, 179. Nothing occurs more than anything else. So in this case, we have no mode. This is another reason to put things in order because it's very easy to spot when there are multiples. That's why median and mode get introduced together because it requires that same first step. But that's it. There's no common numbers for mode, and there's a median of 30. That's it. So to kind of solidify us a little bit more here, we're going to look at one other set that has a little bit of a different quality to it, and we might introduce mean along with these two, just to see how the three work together. So for this example, we're going to be talking about, let's say, a hairstylist and the tips that they're receiving throughout a day. And we're going to find the mean, the median, the mode, and then we're going to talk about which one is better and for what reason in this particular example. So let's say that this particular hairstylist throughout the day today has received these tips. We'll say that she received $5. Oops. Still had that tool on. There we go. So $5. And let's say next one was $2. Next one was, say somebody gave $0. Somebody gave a big tip, $20. Maybe somebody was very specific, $19.65. Maybe $7.89. $8.50. And let's stick a $5 on the end there. Okay, very specific tips here. Okay, so let's talk about the mean, the median, and the mode. So we'll do mean first. Mean, if we recall, is the sum of all terms divided by the number of terms. Okay, so if we add up all of these terms here, we want to add up all these terms. So that is $5 plus $2 plus $0 plus $20 plus $19.56 plus $7.89 plus $8.50 plus $5 again. Then divide by the number of terms. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 terms. Okay, so we take all that and we divide it by 8. So if you work out the math on that one, it's going to be 851. So again, that's just adding up all the top numbers, divide by the bottom number. We did the less on that one there, so I'm just kind of skimming it a little bit so that we get the answer. Okay, so that's our mean. Okay, let's talk about the median. So the median is the center number. So again, we have an even number of values. You can see I'm kind of doing that a couple times because I think that that's the one that needs to be practiced more. But before doing the median and mode, we need this to be in order. So let's rewrite this in order. So obviously $0 is going to be first, since that's the lowest. Then we have $2, $5, $5, $7.89, $8.50, $19.65, and $20. Get all my dollar signs in there. All right. So now that we have this in order, we can find the middle values. So we know that 8, the middle value is going to be right here. Numbers 4 and 5. So 5 and $7.89 are our middle values here. So we have $5 and $7.89. Of course, we know to find the middle value here, we have to add these up and divide by 2, just finding the mean of those two numbers. If we add those up, divide by 2, we will get 645 as our median. And finally, our mode, we need just the most common number. If we look at our list here, 0 occurs once, 2 occurs once, 5 occurs twice, and all of these values only occur once. So our mode must be 5 then, since it is the only value that occurs more than once. It occurs the most. So $5 occurs twice, right? If you were doing an assignment, this would not be expected. You would not have to tell me how many times it occurred unless the question asked for it. I'm just doing it for clarity. Okay? So now here's the part I wanted to get to, which is which measure of central tendency do you think best represents this stylist's tips? Which one is the closest to what she would actually expect as a tip? So let's look at these methods each one by one. First, note that the mean tends to look a little bit larger in terms of how it is written out, but it is still a fairly simple calculation. However, it does differ from the median and the mode in that it relies on the size of these values rather than their position or how frequent they are, right? The median only picks the middle value. It doesn't care about what's on the ends. The mode just picks what's most common. It doesn't care where that number is. The mean does care about what these numbers are. And that's why its value is so significantly different than the others. This one is $8.50, whereas this one is $5, $6.45. Looking at this list, does it look like this stylist often gets tips of more than $8? Well, that only happened a couple of times more than $8. Once it was pretty close, but most of these are under that. At least 5 are under that. Okay? So we could say that the median or the mode are the best measures of central tendency for this particular problem. So the median mode fit this data set, right? And that would be because there is a large set of values here. Somebody tipped very well today. 2 people tipped very well today, but that probably doesn't always happen. The actual central range is probably somewhere closer to here. So this is the part of statistics when you start getting into logic and start getting into talking about what you think, what values fit, what values make sense, and what would actually fit into this set. And it allows us to use mean, median, and mode for what they're actually for, which is to justify where we think that central value should be and to justify what should fit into a data set. And we'll talk a little bit about what should and should not fit into a data set in another lesson a little bit down the line. But for now, that's kind of the summary on how to use the median and the mode along with the mean to find the central tendency.